Module 55 to 59, we are going to be talking about health psychology. Module 59 is overview of the health psychology. So what is health psychology? For many years, the Western thinking was dominated by a medical model. The medical model said health is an absence of illness, and your body is a complex biological machine that can break down and become ill. Sometimes it can be an external cause that is the culprit, such as like a virus. Sometimes you inflict damage to your body by making poor lifestyle choices like smoking or even overeating. The medical model believes that the problem is physical or biological, and the mind has little to do with that. The physical problems call for physical treatments like taking medicine. And again, the mind has little to do with recovery. It would be the medicine that would make you recover. Over the last 50 years, the medical model slowly began to give way to the biopsychosocial model. The biopsychosocial model accepts that both disease and health are strongly influenced by a combination of biological, psychological, and social factors. It's becoming clear that medicine works best when doctors help people make sense of their medical condition to maximize health. The biopsychosocial model defines health as a state of well-being that we can actively attain and maintain. In some ways, health is really all in your mind. Health is very priceless, as we all know. Many diseases and over half of all deaths each year in North America can be traced to our unhealthy behaviors. Healthy psychology aims to use cognitive and behavioral principles to prevent illness and promote well-being. Health psychologists can work with doctors in the field of behavioral medicine. They would apply psychology to manage medical problems such as diabetes or asthma. And their interests include pain control, helping people cope with chronic illness, half screening for disease like breast cancer. Centuries ago, people died from primarily external factors like infectious disease, unavoidable injuries, but today more people die from lifestyle disease. Lifestyle disease involves risky, health-damaging behaviors. For example, lung cancer, HIV and AIDS, heart disease. So what are unhealthy behaviors? Behavioral risk can be controlled and even reversed. Behavioral risk factors are actions that increase the chances of injury, disease, or early death. About 480,000 Americans die every year from smoking-related diseases. The health risk can be reduced by giving up smoking. High levels of stress, untreated high blood pressure, cigarette smoking, abuse of alcohol and abuse of drugs, overeating, inadequate exercise, unsafe sexual behavior, exposure to toxic substances, violence, excessive sun exposure, and reckless driving are all major behavioral risk. The personal habits that you have by the time you are 18 and 19 greatly affect your health, happiness, and life expectancy from years to come. On page 478 in your book, there is a chart of the percentage of U.S. high school students who engage in health-endangered behaviors. And if you have time, go ahead and look that up on your own. Some people have a general disease-prone personality that leaves them depressed, anxious, hostile, and frequently ill. People who are intellectually resourceful, compassionate, optimistic, and not hostile tend to enjoy good health. Depression is linked to damage of health. People who are depressed tend to eat and sleep poorly, rarely exercise, fail to use seatbelts in the cars, and smoke more often. So to prevent disease, health psychologists first try to reduce behavioral risk factors. So in many cases, lifestyle diseases can be prevented by making specific minor changes in behavior. So for example, hypertension or high blood pressure. That can be very deadly, but consuming less sodium can help fend off this silent killer. About 75 million Americans have hypertension. Most people don't change their behavior after being diagnosed, though. 78% of people with hypertension know about it. Only 68% of diagnosed patients are treated. And of those that are treated, only 38% comply with treatment. Only 29% of all people with hypertension are receiving optimal treatment. If 100% of people with hypertension complied with their treatments, the rate would drop by 32%. That means 8.5 million fewer Americans would need treatment in any given year. I find that very shocking that most people would not help themselves with hypertension. Yes, it's hard to reduce salt sometimes, or it's even hard to take the medicine. But if you have hypertension, I would think you would want to help yourself. You would want to better yourself. I know people with diabetes that don't care what they eat necessarily. I hope if I ever have diabetes, I don't get to that point. I want to take care of myself. I want to take the meds or take the insulin that I need to take and try to eat healthier and better myself for the future, for my family, for my kids, and then eventually grandkids one day. So I hope that if you have any issues on down the road, that you take care of yourself, that you're not in that percentage that does not take care of themselves. I find that very interesting. It's a very high number that people don't take care of themselves, even with a diagnosis. Health promoting behaviors include getting regular exercise, controlling smoking and alcohol use, maintaining a balanced diet, getting good medical care, and managing stress. In one study, a risk of dying during a 10-year period was cut by 65% of adults who were careful about their diet, alcohol, exercise, and smoking. Healthy behavior does not have to be restrictive, and it doesn't have to be burdensome. The book recommends eating the Mediterranean diet. If you've never heard of the Mediterranean diet, it consists of fruit, veggies, fish. It says to eat less red meat and to eat less dairy products. The book also recommends 30 minutes of exercise for 3 to 4 times per week, at least 30 minutes, 3 to 4 times per week. So what about alcohol? Moderation is the key. In Mediterranean diet, it suggests having a glass of red wine every night. Consuming 1 to 2 alcoholic drinks per day is generally safe for people. And like I said, a glass of red wine may even be healthy. Having 3 or more drinks per day greatly increases the risk of a stroke, cirrhosis of the liver, cancer, high blood pressure, and heart disorders. So let's continue on with the health psychology. Social networks and healthy behaviors. So one study showed that people who were 57% more likely to become obese if they had a friend who became obese first. Smokers tend to hang out with other smokers. We tend to flock together with like-minded people. So social networks can also spread healthy behaviors. If one smoker quits smoking, others are more likely to follow that lead. Stress can be a major behavioral risk factor if it's prolonged or severe. The saying is to be totally without stress is to be dead. I believe that to be true. Stress is a pressure or demand placed on an organism to adjust or adapt. Right now may be a very stressful time for you with this all what's happening in the world with the COVID-19. It may be very stressful to be inside and to stay indoors or to stay at your house this whole time. People with kids may be stressed out right now because they're not going to school. They're they're not in their regular routine. So that can be very stressful. But I don't think there's gonna always be someone that's gonna be stressed. I don't think stress ever goes away. I think, and I totally agree with that saying. To be totally without stress is to be dead. There's always going to be some kind of stressor in somebody's life, whether it's a family member, whether it's school, their kids, or whatever. There's always going to be some kind of stressor. The stress reaction begins with the autonomic nervous system arousal. So imagine you're standing at the top of a ski jump for the very first time. Internally, you experience a rapid surge in heart rate, blood pressure, respiration, and muscle tension. So the general adaptation syndrome is a 3-stage model of stress response. Hans Selye in 1976 noticed that the first symptom to almost any disease or trauma are almost identical. The body responds in the same way to any stress, whether it be embarrassment, failure, trouble at school, or even a new job. The general adaptation syndrome 3 stages are an alarm reaction, stage of resistance, and a stage of exhaustion. So let's go over the stages. The first one is alarm reaction stage. The alarm reaction stage refers to the initial symptoms a body experiences when under stress. You may be familiar with the fight and flight response, which is a physiological response to stress. This natural reaction prepares you to either flee away from the problem or protect yourself at the problem or in a dangerous situation. Your heart rate increases, your adrenaline gland releases cortisol, which is a stress hormone, and you receive a boost of adrenaline, which increases your energy. The fight or flight response occurs in this first stage, the alarm reaction stage. The second stage is resistance stage. So after initial shock of a stressful event and having that fight and flight response, the body begins to repair itself. It releases a lower amount of cortisol, your heart rate and blood pressure begin to normalize. Although your body enters into a recovery phase, it remains on high alert for a while. So if you overcome stress and the situation is no longer an issue, your body continues to repair itself until your hormone levels, your heart rate, and your blood pressure reach a pre-stress state. Some stressful situations continue for extended period of times. If you don't resolve the stress and your body remains on high alert, it eventually adapts and learns how to live with that high level of stress. So in this stage, the body goes through changes that you're unaware of in an attempt to cope with that stress. Your body continues to secrete the stress hormone. Your blood pressure remains elevated. You may think you're managing stress well, but your body's physical response tells a different story. If the resistance stage continues for too long of a period without pauses to offset the effects of stress, it can lead to the exhaustion stage. So signs of the resistance stage include irritability, frustration, and poor concentration. So exhaustion stage is the last stage. This stage is a result of prolonged or chronic stress. Struggling with stress for a long period can drain your physical, emotional, and mental resources to the point where your body no longer has strength to fight the stress. So you may give up, or you may feel that the situation is just hopeless. So signs of exhaustion include fatigue, burnout, depression, anxiety, a decreased stress tolerance. The physical effects of the stage also weaken your immune system and put you at risk for stress-related illness. So, as you all know, if you're under a lot of stress, it can disrupt your body's immune system. You can get sick with having too much stress. Moving on to Module 56, let's talk about stressors. So stress. A stressor is a specific condition or event that challenges or threatens a person. Some events are more likely to be stressor than others. So can you name, if I was in class, I'd ask you, can you name events that might be more stressful than other events? Maybe having a test might be more stressful than just going to class. Having family members over might be a little bit more stressful, or certain family members over. Our emotions are greatly affected by how we appraise situations. That's why some people are stressed about events and others view it as a thrill or a challenge. Stress depends on how you perceive a situation. To know if you're stressed, we must know what meaning you place on events. Whenever a stressor is appraised as a threat, a powerful stress reaction follows. So according to Richard Lazarus, there are two important steps in dealing with a threat. The first is called a primary appraisal. You decide whether a situation is relevant or irrelevant, positive or threatening. You basically answered the question, am I okay or am I in trouble? Then you make a secondary appraisal. You will assess your resources and choose a way to meet the threat or a challenge. You would ask yourself, what can I do about the situation? The way a situation is sized up greatly affects our ability to cope with it. Emphasizing a threat in a situation, like public speaking, it can be viewed as a threat, and the threat might be an imagining failure, rejection, or even embarrassment. When we have a threat, it invites disaster. When we view it as, well, I have to go do a speech, I'm going to be a failure, a lot of times it might end up that way because that's the way we're viewing it. It's valuable to learn to think in ways that ward off the body's stress response. So before you get on stage, before you start your speech, you might want to do things that make stress go away. You can do some breathing exercises. You can think in a positive way to get off that stress response. In most day-to-day situations, perceived threat has to do with the idea of control. We are prone to feel stressed when we can't think, or when we can't or think we can't control our immediate environment. So basically, all this threat, all this stress has to do with control. If we are prone to feel stress, we think we can't control our environment, or we know we can't control our environment, that is when we get stressed. I totally agree 100% with that. To be stressed is not having any control over what is going on. A perceived lack of control is just as threatening as a real lack of control. A sense of control comes from believing you can reach desired goals. It is threatening to feel that we lack competence to cope with life's demands. Unpredictability is another important factor. Police officers suffer high rates of stress related diseases. Why? Because they have a threat of injury or death, plus occasional confrontations of angry, drunk, hostile citizens. So it takes a toll on a person. So having an unpredictable job leads to stress. And again, it can lead to high rates of stress-related diseases because of that job. They don't ever know what to expect to be a policeman. Pressure is another element of stress, especially job stress. Pressure occurs when a person must meet urgent external demands or expectations. We feel pressured when activities must be sped up or when extra work is added. Some of you might have felt pressured when we moved to online courses. Hopefully I am doing a good job of not having a whole lot of stress on you. I didn't want to add a whole lot of stress because our world is already chaotic at the moment and it's very stressful at the moment. Some people probably freaked out by moving a class that was face to face to online. I wanted to relieve that pressure, and hopefully I did, to not help you stress out about school. So, what if you set a deadline for yourself? Does that source of pressure make a difference? It can certainly help, since that it would tend to increase your sense of self-control. In one study, nurses with a high sense of control were less likely to get sick, either physically or mentally, than nurses with a low sense of control. So deadlines definitely help. It helps you have that sense of control. You know exactly when it's due. You know exactly when to do it in, how much time you have to do it in. So that kind of gives you a sense of control and how to handle it yourself. Let's talk about burnout. So, burnout is when workers are physically, mentally, and emotionally drained. They may experience what is called burnout. When a person becomes burned out, they experience emotional exhaustion and feelings of reduced personal accomplishments. Burnout can happen in any type of job, but it's a special problem in emotionally demanding helping professions like nursing, teaching, social work, childcare, counseling, police work. I'm sure in the world today, nurses are working nonstop. They're going to get burned out because their hospital is busy, nurses are busy nonstop, and they can't catch a break. And so, yes, they will end up probably, some of them, getting burned out on their jobs. They may even quit their jobs after this because they are so tired. Also, people who are more passionate about their work are more vulnerable to being burned out. So, can college students experience burnout? Yeah, absolutely. If you have a negative attitude toward your college studies and you feel like college work is too much, you have way too much going on, you have way too much homework, you may feel burned out. You may even stop because of that college burnout. So yes, definitely, college students can have or can experience burnout. Let's talk about poverty and health. Relative poverty is a condition in which people lack the minimum amount of income needed in order to maintain the average standard of living in a society in which they live. Relative poverty is considered the easiest way to measure the level of poverty in an individual country. In general, the poorer people are, the more their health suffers and their life expectancy lowers. Today, less than 10% of the world population lives in extreme poverty. New poverty estimates by the World Bank suggest that the number of extremely poor people, those who live on $1.90 a day or less, has fallen from 1.9 billion in 1990 to 736 million in 2015. It has dropped quite a bit, but I can't even imagine living on $1.90 a day or even less. That's very extreme poor, especially in the United States, or in most countries at that. I can't even fathom what it would be like to live that way. Physician Stephen Bezruka, I hope I said that right, I'm not sure, has shown that Greeks earn on average less than half of what Americans earn, and yet they live a longer life expectancy. So, how can this be? One possibility is suggested by a study that found poor women in California are more likely to die if they live in a better neighborhood than if they live in poor neighborhoods. Being constantly reminded that you are relatively poor piles on extra measure of stress. So income inequality in America proves to be chronic social stressor. The U.S. currently has the largest income inequality in the developed world. The U.S. is in competition with each other, which is also a stressor. Everybody seems to be in competition with each other in the United States, which is a very high stressor. So let's talk about the types of stressors. So, what are some types of stressors in life? Getting married. It can be a stressor. Moving to another country. Minor hassles in life. So getting cut off when you're driving. Having too many things going on. Conflicts with other people or being frustrated by people or some situation. If I were to ask this in class, probably somebody would say the parking lot at Tarleton. Parking is a minor hassle, is a stressor in life. Parking lot at Tarleton, you can't find a parking space. It's been that way for years. I don't know why they haven't come up with more parking, but they haven't. When I went to Tarleton, I graduated in 2007. It was still the same way. There was no parking. You had to get to class. If you had an 8 o'clock class, you had to be there by 7:30, 7:45 to even get a good parking space. If it was even closer to 8 o'clock, there was nothing there. So yeah, that is a daily hassle, the parking for sure. Again, anything can be a stressor in life. Getting married, planning the wedding is a stressor. I planned my wedding for a year. It was a great stressor in life. Disaster, depression, and sorrow often precede illness. Life changes, either good or bad life changes, can increase susceptibility to accidents or illness. Major changes in our life require us to be on guard and ready to react at any time. And over a long time, this can be very stressful. Psychiatrist Thomas Holmes and graduate student Richard Raw developed the first rating scale to estimate the health hazards we face when stresses add up. Again, it is still widely used today. The scale is called Social Readjustment Rating Scales, SRRS. So if you have the book, it is on page 488. I also have a link that you can take it at. It is on the PowerPoint, as you see here. You can just copy and paste and do the social readjustment rating scales. It's very interesting. If you notice on the scales, vacation is on there or Christmas is on there. They tend to be positive events. If we think about a vacation or we think about Christmas, it usually ends up in a positive way of thinking. But it can be stressful leading up to the vacation. It can be stressful leading up to Christmas. Even the day of, it can be very stressful. Vacation is definitely can be very difficult, especially when you have babies or young kids. You're not sure how they're going to act on vacation. To use the SRRS, you will add up all the LCUs or the life change units you have experienced within the last 12 months and compare the total. So after you take your SRRS, here's what it means. So if you score a 0 to 150, it means you have no significant problems. If you score 150 to 199, it means you may have a mild life crisis, which is like a 33% chance of illness. If you score a 200 to 299, it means moderate life crisis, which means you have a 50% chance of illness. And if you score 300 or more, it means a major life crisis, which you have an 80% chance of having an illness. And the illness would be within the next year or so. In one study, People are deliberately exposed to a virus that causes common colds. If a person has a high stress score, they were much more likely to get that cold. High levels of stress should be taken seriously. So many of us face ongoing stresses at work or home that do not involve major life changes. These minor but frequent stresses are called hassles. So what are some common hassles? Too many things to do. Again, we talked about the parking lot at Tarleton. Parking is a hassle. Not having enough money to do certain things is a hassle. Having communication problems with friends is a hassle. Losing things. I'm always losing my phone. I set it down and I can't find it. That's a hassle. It happens on a daily basis. Weight. Not having too much weight, not being able to lose weight, not being able to gain weight is a hassle. Parents' expectations. Maybe parents expect you to make all A's in your classes. That can be a hassle. Driving can be a hassle. There are bad drivers out there, so that can definitely be a hassle. In one study, 100 men and women recorded the hassles they endured during a year. Participants also reported their physical and mental health. Frequent and severe hassles turned out to be better predictors of day-to-day health than major life events. Daily hassles are closely linked to immediate health and psychological well-being. So moving on, this is continued. Acculturated stress. So this is stress caused by adapting to a foreign culture. Typically, reactions to this kinds of stress are anxiety, hostility, depression, alienation, identity confusion. For many immigrants, acculturated stress is a major source of mental health problems. The severity of this type of stress is related to part of how a person adapts to a new culture. So just imagine yourself moving to a whole new country. It would be very stressful. It would be very hard on that person. An example I give to most of my classes, I went to India for a wedding 3 years ago. I believe it was 3 years ago. My husband and I spent 2 weeks over in India. If you never really thought about India, which I had not really at the time, it's crazy to think that I ever went, but it's not the nicest country. They do live in poverty. A lot of them live in poverty. It's not the cleanest of countries. The United States would be one of the cleanest of countries. So I was excited. I was anxious about going. I can't imagine living in India for forever. 2 weeks was enough for me. I left my kids at home, which that caused a lot of great anxiety. My youngest one was 9 months when I left him. 2 weeks was just too long for me. But we had a lot of fun in India, but it was definitely a stressor. Again, I would probably never go back unless it was with my kids to show them that this is how some people live. This is what another country would look like. So yeah, definitely there was a lot of stress. I'm not really into the food that India has. They have a lot of spicy food, and so I had to adapt by eating some of their food, which I did not really enjoy. But you have a lot of stress when you go to another country. Moving on to frustration. It is a negative emotional state that occurs when people are prevented from reaching desired goals. If your goal of finding a parking space is blocked by another car, you may be frustrated and you may experience stress. Obstacles of all kinds can cause frustrations. External frustrations is based on conditions outside a person's control. So an external one is having a flat tire, having a marriage proposal rejected. So they're based on delays, failures, rejection, and loss. External frustrations can be social as well. So imagine you're at the movie theater and a really tall person sits in front of you at the theater. You're not going to be able to see as well. Another one is slow drivers, people who cut in line. External frustrations can be non-social also. So a dead battery in your car. You have a baseball game and there's rain on the day of the baseball game. If you ask a person who has what has frustrated them lately, most people will respond with someone's behavior. So my teacher grades too hard. My supervisor is very unfair. My teacher is very unfair. Personal frustrations are based on personal characteristics. So, for example, if you're only 4 foot tall and you want to be or you aspire to be a professional basketball player, you're probably going to be very frustrated. If you want to go to medical school, if your dream is to be a doctor, but you only earn D grades, you're going to get frustrated. So this frustration is based on personal limitations. So what are the reactions to frustration? One of the most frequent responses to frustration is aggression. Aggression is any physical or verbal behavior intended to hurt someone. But frustration doesn't always cause aggression. Frustration is met with persistence first, often in the form of more vigorous efforts and varied responses. So, for example, if you put your last dollar in the vending machine, press the button, and it has no effect, you'll probably press harder and faster. So that's that vigorous effort. Then you may start pressing other buttons on the machine. That's a varied response. So you're thinking, okay, this is what I want. You press it, it doesn't have any effect. You press it again over and over harder at this point in time to get it. If you don't get it, you're going to press other things. Well, maybe I can get this instead. Maybe it will work instead. That's a varied response. Persistent may help you reach your goal by getting around the barrier. So if the machine refuses to deliver you what you want out of the machine, or even return your dollar at this point in time, you may get very aggressive and you may start kicking the vending machine because you're not getting what you want. You're not getting your dollar back. You're not getting the food that you want out of the vending machine. So how is aggression displaced? Displaced aggression is redirecting aggression on a target other than the actual source of one's frustration. So, for example, lashing out at a friend who was not the real cause of your annoyance. Scapegoating is another way of aggression. That is refers to the process by which a person or a group is unfairly blamed for something they did not do, and the result, the real source of the problem, is either never seen or purposely ignored. Another major reaction to frustration is escape or withdrawal. It is stressful and unpleasant to be frustrated. If other reactions do not reduce frustration, a person may try to escape. Escape may be actually leaving the source of frustration. So if you are very frustrated with school, you're not getting what you want out of school, you may drop out. That would be an escape of dropping out of school. If you are married and you're not very happy and get frustrated, you're very stressed out in your marriage, you may leave that unhappy marriage. Again, with a job, if you're very frustrated, if you're very stressed, if it's not getting to what you want to do, you may quit your job. That's escaping from that frustration. I know when I was in college, especially my very first semester, I had to drop out of a couple of classes because it was too much. It was too much stress. I had too much to do at that point in time in that class. So I dropped out of the class. I didn't drop out of school. I just dropped out of that class, which helped me do better in my other classes. I was escaping from that frustration. Conflicts occur whenever a person must choose between contradictory needs, desires, motives, or demands. So choosing between college and work, a marriage, or single life are examples of conflict. And there are 3 types of conflict. The first one is approach conflict. So this is having to choose between 2 positive or desirable alternatives. So for example, choosing ice cream at an ice cream shop. So you have a whole bunch of different flavors. That is approach. You like ice cream, and you're having to choose what you want. That's positive choices there. Another example is deciding between 2 choices of an awesome vacation. So you either want to go to the beach or you want to go to the mountains. They're 2 awesome vacations, but that is an approach conflict. They're positive conflicts. The second one is avoidance conflict. So this is being forced to choose from 2 negative or undesirable alternatives. So deciding to do unwanted housework or unwanted homework. So you live in your house, you have dishes stacked on each other in the sink, or you have a paper to write that you don't want to write. That is 2 negative or undesirable things to do. Avoidance conflicts often have this saying, damned if you do and damned if you don't. I believe that is in your textbook. And then we have approach avoidance. So these conflicts are very difficult to resolve. A person in this conflict is caught by being attracted to and repelled by the same goal or activity. Attraction keeps the person in the situation, but its negative aspect causes turmoil and distress. So some real life examples of approach avoidance is marrying someone your parents disapprove of. So you love this person, but your parents disapprove of him or her. Wanting to buy a car, but not wanting to make monthly payments on the car. Wanting to eat when you're already overate. When you already overate, you know you're full, but you want to eat again. That's an approach avoidance conflict. Ambivalence is a central characteristic of approach avoidance conflicts. Ambivalence is a mixed positive and negative feelings. So how do we handle conflicts more effectively? The first way to do it is don't be in a hurry when making important decisions. Decisions made in a hurry are often regretted. Second is try out important decisions partially if possible. So if you're thinking about moving into another town, spend a few days there first. A good example is my husband would love to live on his own boat, not necessarily a houseboat but a catamaran type of boat. He has often talked about it. So I agreed this past summer that we stay a weekend. We went to Kemah, Texas, and spent a weekend in a boat. It was very interesting, but I decided that it wasn't time to move into a boat yet because we have 2 little kids. I want them to get older first. And then I decided maybe in the future that we could live on a boat. So that's if you want these, you have to try out important decisions first to make sure that you are okay with them. Especially like moving into another country or another town. Spend a few days in there. See what it's like before you make that commitment. Number 3 is to look for workable compromises. Get all the available information first. So get all the available information about the town, about the job, about anything on how to handle all different conflicts. Ask for the resources if you're unsure. Like getting into college, you want to get all the information first about that college. You may not want to dive in and not know anything about college before you get there. So you always look for the resources. And in all else fails, make a decision and live with it. So if you want to move into a new town, new country, and you can't spend a few days there first, just go dive in make the decision and live with it. And just know that conflicts are a normal part of life. Sometimes you have to live with the stresses of life. Moving on to Module 57, this is coping with stress. So you have two options of handling a stressful situation. Both involve thinking and acting in ways that help us handle stress. Problem-focused coping aims at managing or correcting the distressing situation. You are making a plan of action or concentrating on your next step. Your other option is emotion-focused coping. In this coping, we try to control our emotion reaction to the situation. So, for example, we may try to calm or distract ourselves or another person by listening to music, taking a walk, or seeking emotional support from someone else. So moving on to problem-focused coping, so it tends to be more useful in controllable situations where you can do something about it. Whereas emotion-focused coping tends to be useful in situations where you cannot control the stressor. So can both types occur together? Yeah, absolutely they can. Quieting your emotions make it easier for you to solve your problems. So for example, if you have a big presentation in class, and if you're nervous and anxious about that presentation, you can take a few deep breaths to reduce that anxiety. So that's emotion focused. And you'll be able to glance over your notes to improve the delivery of your presentation. That's problem focused. But they can also clash. So for example, if you have to make a difficult decision, you may suffer intense emotional distress. In this circumstance, it is tempting to make a quick, unreflective choice just to end the suffering. Doing this may allow you to cope with your emotions, but it shortchanges the problem-focused coping. Traumatic experiences produce psychological injuries or intense emotional pain. What are traumatic stresses? War, torture, rape, assassination, natural disaster, and street violence are all examples of traumatic stresses. Victims may suffer nightmares, flashbacks, insomnia, grief, emotional numbing, and depression. So 20% of people who live close to the World Trade Center in New York City suffered serious stress disorders after the 9/11 attacks. Most of you were born during this time, I'm pretty sure. So you may not have, I'm sure you've heard about it, but you didn't witness it in person probably for the most part. So 20% of people who live just close to the World Trade Center series suffer stress disorder after the 9/11 attacks. In fact, 44% of U.S. adults who only saw the 9/11 attacks on TV had some stress symptoms. So that's quite a bit. 44% who just watched it on TV had some kind of stress symptoms. I remember I was in high school when this happened. I had been to New York City 2 months prior to this happening, 2 or 3 months prior to it happening. I remember I was in choir class when there was an announcement on the speaker, and they told the teachers to stop teaching, to turn on the TV, and we watched it all day long. For 2 days at least, we watched it all day long. I remember walking the halls. It was pretty quiet, not a whole lot of talking going on at this point in time. We were all just wondering what had happened. Why did this happen? It was kind of a somber experience going through this. And it was. I think most of us were stressed out, especially the choir people that had just went 2 or 3 months before in the summer. We all thought, well, that could have been us up there. We didn't go to the World Trade Center, or most of us did not. But we were there prior to that happening. So we all were stressed out. It was a very emotional day or week during that 9/11 week. Traumatic stress produces feelings of helplessness and vulnerability. Victims realize that disaster could strike again without warning. Many victims also feel out of control with their lives. So, what can people do about the reactions of traumatic stress? You can identify what you're feeling. You can talk to others about your fears and your concerns. You can think about skills that have helped you overcome adversity in the past and apply them to the present. Continue to do the things that you enjoy in life, make your life meaningful. Get support from other people, and give yourself time to heal. Psychological defense. Threatening situations tend to produce anxiety. When you're anxious, you feel tense, uneasy, apprehensive, worried, and vulnerable. The unpleasant state can lead to emotion-focused coping that is defensive in nature. Psychodynamic psychologists have identified different defense mechanisms that allow us to reduce anxiety caused by stressful situations. You may not always be aware of them, but you've probably used at least several of them in your life. If you have your book on page 498, there's a table of all the defense mechanisms. So what is a defense mechanism? It is a protective behavior that reduces anxiety. Many of these defense mechanisms were first identified by Sigmund Freud. So here are some common ones that we will talk about. The first one's denial. Denial is protecting oneself from an unpleasant reality of refusing to accept it or believe it. So we are prone to deny death and illness. Denial and disbelief are common reactions to an unexpected death of a friend or a relative. It's just not real, you might say. I don't believe it. A couple years ago, I had an aunt and two baby cousins that were in a car accident, and it killed my aunt and two of my baby cousins. For over a month, I sat in denial. I think everybody in my family did. It was very, this is not real. I just can't believe this. It's still crazy to think about that they were hit in a car accident and were killed instantly. But yeah, denial hit the whole family. So and that was very, it was a bad car accident, but we were all in denial about it. Repression. Freud noticed that his patients had difficulty recalling shocking or traumatic events from childhood. It seemed like a powerful force was holding the events down from awareness, and he called this repression. We use it to protect ourselves by blocking out threatening thoughts and impulses, feelings of hostility toward a family member, the names of people we dislike. The past failures are common targets of repression. Reaction formation is another defense mechanism. So impulses are not just repressed, they are held in check by exaggerating opposite behavior. So, for example, a homosexual individual who fears society finding out about their orientation may have a number of heterosexual affairs. They may flirt with women. They may be very open about criticizing homosexuals, even though they are homosexual themselves. Regression is another one. So this is retreating to an earlier level of development, less demanding habits or situations. So if you have children, and when you have a child, especially the second one, most parents who have a second child have to put up with at least some regression. The older child may feel threatened by the second child. So again, there's a new rival for attention and affection. The older child may regress back to using childish speech or playing with baby toys. If a child gets homesick while away, he's regressing. An adult can also regress. So an adult who throws a temper tantrum is regressing, according to Freud. Projection is another one. So projection is a psychological defense mechanism in which individuals attribute characteristics they find unacceptable in themselves to another person. So, for example, a husband who has hostile nature might attribute this hostility to his wife and say that she has an anger management problem. It justifies one's own action and directs attention away from personal failings. And then we have rationalization. So this is basically just making excuses. Rationalization refers to justifying personal actions by giving plausible, rational, but false reasons for them. So teachers hear this all the time. My dog ate my homework. My books were stolen. My computer wasn't working at the time. So that is rationalization. People who overuse defense mechanisms become less adaptable because they consume great amount of emotional energy to control anxiety and maintain an unrealistic self-image. But they do have value. Defense mechanisms help keep us from being overwhelmed by immediate threats. It can provide time for a person to learn to cope in a more effective problem-focused manner. There are a few defense mechanisms that are positive, so we will go over these more positive defense mechanisms. Compensation is one of them. So this occurs when a person with a defect or weakness, either real or imagined, goes to unusual lengths to overcome the weakness or excel in other areas. For example, Jack LaLanne opened up the first health club. He was a successful bodybuilder, but as a young man, he was very sickly and he was very thin. But he overcame his defect or weakness by opening a first health club. Another example is Helen Keller. She was unable to see and hear, but she became an outstanding writer and thinker. Another one is displacement or sublimation. So throughout sublimation, people are able to transform unwanted impulses into something that is less harmful and often even helpful. Freud believed that art, music, dance, poetry, and other creative activities could serve to rechannel sexual energies into productive behavior. He also believed that almost any strong desire could be displaced. For example, a very aggressive person may find social acceptance as a professional soldier or wrestler. Lying may be displaced by storytelling or creative writing or even politics. Let's talk about depression. Depression is one of the most widespread emotional problems. It can have many causes: learned helplessness, the belief that one cannot control the outcome of events, seems to be explained for many of the cases. So, for example, Martin Seligman describes the fate of Archie, a 15-year-old boy. For Archie, school is an unending series of shocks and failures. Other students treat him as if he's stupid. In class, he rarely answers questions because he does not know some of the words. He feels knocked down everywhere he turns. These are called emotional shocks, and Archie has learned to passively endure whatever shocks in life has in store for him. Hopelessness is always a major element of depression. Depression is a complex problem that takes many forms and has many causes. It is more than a minor fluctuation in mood. Depression exists even when a person has these symptoms. So the first symptom is persistent sad or anxious or empty feelings. The second, feelings of guilt, worthlessness, helplessness, or any a combination of the three. Difficulties concentrating, remembering all the details, making a decision. Having feelings of hopelessness, or even being pessimistic. Having a loss of interest in all activities or hobbies that were once pleasurable. College blues. So do you have the college blues? Many students suffer symptoms of depression, which takes a toll on performance. In one study, students diagnosed with depression scored half a grade point below non-depressed students. So why do students get the blues? So here's the most common problems. Stresses from college work and pressures to choose a career can leave a student feeling that they're missing out on all the fun or that their hard work is meaningless. Isolation and loneliness are common when students leave a support group behind. So if you've moved out of town, if you're living at Tarleton and you moved from another town, your friends may not be with you. Your parents probably aren't with you. Your support group is in that town where you left them. So you can feel isolated and become lonely. Problems with studying and grades. Many students start out with high aspirations and little experience with failure. Many lack basic skills necessary for academic success. I know when I first started college, I did not have the skills or the knowledge of how college was to be. So I had to drop out of a few classes. I wasn't ready for the college atmosphere. I wasn't ready for college classes at the time. High school did not help me in any bit learn about what college life was going to be like, what college classes were going to be like. I really think college classes was totally different than high school classes. Another reason that students get college blues is a breakup of an intimate relationship. Maybe you had a boyfriend or girlfriend back in your hometown and you moved to Stephenville. You might have broke up with that boyfriend or girlfriend. Or maybe in college you met somebody, but you recently had a breakup. That can cause the blues. Students who find it difficult to live up to their idealized images of themselves. So again, you may have all these aspirations. You're going to do very well in college. That may not be happening. You may not be living up to what you imagined college was going to be like or what you were going to do in college. Depressed students are more likely to abuse alcohol, which is also a depressant. So how do you cope with the college blues? You have to learn to manage college work and you have to challenge your self-critical thinking. So don't overreact on grades. It's not the end of the world. You can do college. Work on homework a little at a time. Don't procrastinate. I'm sure some of you procrastinated on the paper that was just due recently. If I were you, I would have started it at the very beginning of the semester and worked on it little by little by little. You could have had it done pretty darn quick. But yeah, I understand. I was once there. I procrastinated too. But it's best not to procrastinate. And again, don't overreact on your grades. I'll let you in on a secret. I got a few D's on my transcript, and I'm still doing what I want to do. Even if you make a few bad grades, yeah, your GPA is important, but life is more important than your GPA. When you go out and get a job, they're not going to look at your GPA. They just want to see that you have a diploma in your hand, that you actually went to college. More than likely, they're not going to look at your GPA. So, try not to overreact on grades. Again, I had a few D's on I think 1 or 2 D's on my transcript, and I'm still doing what I want to do. So don't stress out about grades. It's not the end of the world. If you have any questions over what we've learned so far, please don't hesitate to ask. Let's move on to stress and health. Module 58. The immune system is regulated by the brain, as we all know. Because of this link, stress and upsetting emotions can affect the immune system in ways that increase susceptibility to disease. Psychoneuroimmunology is the study of links among behavior, stress, disease, and the immune system. Studies show that the immune system is weakened in students during major exam times. If I were in class, I would ask you, during final exams or midterm exams, do you tend to get sick? I've asked this in the past, and a lot of people do get sick or have a cold or have their immune systems weaken in some way. It's also lowered, immunity is also lowered by divorce, bereavement, poor sleep, a troubled marriage, job loss, and even depression. Stress causes the body to release substances that increase inflammation. This part of the body's self-protective response to threats, but it can prolong infections and delay healing. Prolonged stress reactions are closely related to psychosomatic illnesses. Psychological factors contribute to actually bodily damage or to damaging changes in bodily function. The most common psychosomatic illnesses are gastrointestinal and respiratory. For example, asthma, hypertension, stomach pain, eczema, hives, migraine headaches, ulcers in the colon, heart disease. Many lesser health complaints are also stress-related. Examples are sore muscles, backaches, indigestion, fatigue, chronic diarrhea, constipation, and sexual dysfunctions. So reducing stress can help with all of these illnesses. Let's talk about personality and health. Cardiologists Meyer Friedman and Ray Rosenman classified people as either type A personality or type B personality. So type A personality is someone who runs a high risk for heart attack. Type A personality people have hard driving, ambitious, they're highly competitive, they're achievement oriented, and they're very striving. These people believe that with enough effort they can overcome any obstacles, they can push themselves to get there. They have a sense of urgency, that they're racing to the clock to get everything in, and they feel a constant sense of frustration. Type B, which I hope you are all type B people, they're often described as easygoing, relaxed, and highly flexible. They are unlikely to have a heart attack. And an 8-year follow-up, they found more than twice the rate of heart disease in type A than type B. At first, research appeared to support the idea of cardiac personality, but not so much anymore. Researchers have found that only feelings of anger and hostility are reliably related to increased risk of heart attack. Other researchers have failed to find a relationship between the type A behavior and heart disease. Most psychologists now are even skeptical of the type A and type B personalities. I hope most people are easygoing, relaxed, and highly flexible. That is really the way to be in life, not to be highly competitive. Just always try to do your best, always try to be ambitious, but be flexible about it, be easygoing about it. Another type of personality is called a hardy personality. Hardy people are usually resistant to stress. The first study of hardiness began with 2 groups of managers at a large utility company. All the managers had a high stress position, yet some tended to get more sick after stressful events, and then others were rarely sick after these events. And so the hardy people showed these kind of characteristics. They had a sense of personal commitment to self, work, family, and other stabilizing values. They felt that they had control over their lives and their work. And they also had a tendency to see life as a series of challenges rather than a series of threats or problems. Persons strong in commitment find their ways to turn whatever they're doing into something that seems interesting and important. They tend to get involved rather than feel left out. They believe that they are in control and they can influence the course of events. They find fulfillment in continual growth. They seek to learn from their experiences rather than accept easy comfort, security, and routine. I'll let you in on something. I feel like I am not a hardy type of personality. I still tend to get very stressed out in different situations. My kids stress me out a lot. I worry about my firstborn a lot. He's the one that has a lot of issues, so I feel like I have high stress. Since he's been out of school, it's a little bit less stressful because I don't have to get him up in the morning and we do schoolwork, but it's on his terms when we do schoolwork, or it's on my terms when I'm ready for him to do schoolwork. He's not I'm not really in a hurry to do schoolwork with him during these days that we're home, and so it's been less stressful with him at home than it is when he goes to school. So yes, I have not found my personality is definitely not the hardy type of personality. I hope to achieve to get there one day, but it's not there yet. Maybe when my kids get a little older and I see that they're doing okay, I will be that type of personality. But right now, I feel like sometimes I don't have control over what I do in my life because of them. But hopefully, I'll get there one day. This is our last module that we're going to go over. We're going to go over it pretty quick. This is over stress management. So, how do we handle stress? Stress management is the use of cognitive and behavioral strategies to reduce stress and improving coping skills. So you can begin to manage your stress by recognizing that stress triggers bodily effects, ineffective behavior, and upsetting thoughts. There are a number of ways that you can combat these negative effects of stress. So not all will be effective for all people, but you can definitely try to see if they work. Exercising is one way to get rid of stress. Regular exercise alters hormones, circulation, and muscle tone. These changes can reduce anxiety and lower the risk of disease. Be sure to choose activities that are vigorous but also very enjoyable. Even 10 to 20-minute sessions can help reduce that stress. Exercise is a great way to ward off the stress. I definitely love to exercise. I don't often do exercise, but I do love to do exercise. I'm very big into dancing, and so I do love to dance. That definitely helps get rid of the stress. Meditation is another way to promote relaxation. Listening to music, taking a walk, enjoying the hobbies that you like to enjoy, those are all things related to meditation. I'm really big into listening to music. I like to turn my radio up full blast, sing and listen to music. That definitely helps me relax, makes me feel much better. Progressive relaxation is to tighten all the muscles in any given area of your body and to voluntarily relax them. This is another way to relax. And then guided imagery is another way. This is when people visualize images that are calming, relaxing, and beneficial. So basically, if I was to guide you in this imagery, I might say to close your eyes and picture a beach. You're sitting in a hammock, you have a cold drink in your hand, you're at the beach. You're hearing all the waves. Hopefully, that would relax you in some way. It would make you feel better. It would make you feel calm. You could even do that right before a test. You could close your eyes and think of a beach, or think of a place that's calming and relaxing to you. So remember to slow down, seek social support when you need it, even journal your feelings, write it down. These also will help reduce your stress. Try not to have upsetting thoughts. Stay positive in your stress. Don't try to be negative, but stay positive. Say positive statements to reduce your stress. So if you're taking an exam and you're running short on time, remind yourself to take one question at a time and not to rush. If you get upset, if you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have much time, getting upset is not going to help you. Rushing through it is not going to help your stress level. Remember that happiness, laughter, and delight tend to strengthen your immune system. Doing things that make you happy can also protect your health. So have a great sense of humor. Have the ability to laugh at your ups and downs, laugh at your achievements and your failures. The vast majority of events are only as stressful as you allow them to be. So really take that in. Take that sentence in, because that is very true. The vast majority of events are only stressful as you allow them to be. Remember, life is about having fun. Life should not be stressful. It is, but it shouldn't be. That is what life's about, is just having fun and being in good health. Having a whole bunch of fun that's out there, that's available for us. If you have any thoughts, any questions on health psychology, please let me know. That ends our module session. Again, if you have any questions, just let me know.